Greetings, world, and welcome back to another episode of the NeuroWellness Project, a podcast devoted to exploring compassionate and evidence informed approaches to autism. In today's episode, we are exploring transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS therapy. Originally developed to treat depression and other mood disorders, TMS is now being explored as a potential treatment for autism. It is a non invasive modality that uses gentle magnetic pulses to influence the brain's electrical activity, stimulating communication between neurons and reshaping the way that synapses connect and fire. And over time, this modulation of neural networks can help to form new patterns of connectivity in the brain, supporting mood regulation, sensory processing, and cognitive function. This is a treatment that my own son has received twice and with some pretty amazing results. But how does it work? And what does the research show? And what are the ins and outs of using it in neurodevelopmental care? To help us explore these questions, I am being joined today by Frank Plut, a New Jersey TMS clinician and parent with a remarkable story. Frank is bringing not only scientific insight, but also personal and practical experience to this conversation, and he will help us understand what TMS can and can't do in the context of autism. And I am so excited to be joined now by Frank Plut. Hi, Frank. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Hey, Sarah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So, could you tell us a little bit about your own story with TMS?
Sure. So I run the TMS medical office here in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. And the way I got started with TMS was because of my son. He's 16 now, and he's in a typical high school, and he's actually a straight A student. And he does that because if you get an A in a subject, you don't have to take the final. So it motivates him to get A. But no, when he was a year and a half, he was diagnosed with autism, and he was a severe toe walker and nonverbal and had gut issues, had a lot of candida. He had a lot of toxic overload. We measured his glutathione levels and they were zero. He had depleted all his glutathione trying to detox. So there was a lot going on. So anyway, I started searching as every other parent does, and again, he's 16 now. So this is many years ago. One of the things I found was that TMS was able to help the brain in all people just function better. And what they found was that different lobes of the brain in autism function at different speeds, and they really should be functioning at the same speed so that they can communicate with each other. And so if you can line those up and get them functioning at the same speed, that's a big part of the problem to get the brain to function more the way it was meant to. So, yeah, we had to travel to California. There was nobody anywhere on the East Coast I could find, that did anything for autism with TMS. And we got him treated. And while there, he actually did become verbal while we were in California. And that was when he was 6 years old.
Whoa.
And so, yeah, we have it on a video where on the way back from California, he looks out the window of the plane and he says, "Goodbye, California. See you soon."
What?
This was a nonverbal kid. Now, we didn't have complete conversations at that point. He would say, like a three-word sentence once a day, and it went up from there. He'd
Yeah.
say, "I want potty, I want juice," and then he would just make a lot of baby babble. But at 6 years old, he started.
What?
And, I worked hard to get his gut issues under control. He had some severe candida and had a very bloated belly. And I had to find the correct probiotics that were going to get rid of the candida. And I did. I found that and gave that to him. And his belly went down. His stool became very normal looking. So that was one thing that I worked on. The body is complex and it interacts with the mind. You have to have a healthy body to have a healthy mind. And that's for any of us, you know? So when we came back, how did I get started? Again, to answer that. So when we came back from California, I wanted to be able to offer this to other people. And so I started working on opening my own TMS medical office for autism primarily, with a focus. And, we do multiple things now, including depression, anxiety, sleep disorder. PTSD is a big one. Believe it or not, we treat stroke, and stroke responds very favorably as well. People regain mobility, regain speech. As a piece of trivia, in Japan, if you have a stroke, that's the number one treatment is they immediately give you TMS. Yeah, but those are all side issues. Focusing back on autism, I think, is more complex than any of those. It's more complex than depression, anxiety, PTSD, stroke. And the reason is we can bring a lot of those other people back to where they were once in their life, right? So a depression person can come back to being non-depressed. An anxiety person can come back to having no anxiety or little. But with autism, something you've always had, where we're moving into, bringing a person to somewhere where they've never been. And that's a little bit harder and takes a little bit longer. And TMS is part of that journey. It absolutely is. I've treated very severe people and they've taken longer. 6 months of steady treatment. And I've gotten some people that were even a little bit older. They were in their 20s and nonverbal and not necessarily potty trained, not bathing themselves, eating with their hands, not with utensils. And we've gotten them to where they're, potty trained. They're bathing themselves. They're eating at the kitchen table with utensils now. They have some vocabulary. Um, not saying they hold conversations, but they can respond. And these are
Wow.
these are very, very severe, I'm saying. So
Yes,
it's a journey. TMS helps you get there. The more severe you longer the treatment required.
absolutely. So, how many kids have you treated in your practice of TMS?
Just over 250.
Well, I have to let you know that my son, for all of our listeners out there, my son has been to Frank 2 times for TMS. And both times we have realized that there have been miraculous results in like his sensory processing. So before TMS, he was 5 when we brought him for his first round of treatment. Before TMS, he would have horrible meltdowns, sometimes out of nowhere. I mean, violent, like, yeah, it was horrible. And after our first round of TMS, even to this day, his meltdowns are almost non existent anymore. He's able to like process the world around him a lot better. And even after his second round, which we just wrapped up a few months ago, he's able to see better, like, actually, like, vision-wise, he's actually able to see things that he wasn't able to perceive before, so this modality, it's super interesting. My next question would be, in your professional opinion, are there any particular age groups or autism presentations that maybe respond better to TMS therapy?
So the brain, just to answer this question broadly and then specifically, the brain, it's called plasticity, which is your ability to change, brain's ability to change. And plasticity has been proven to be with us even into our later times of life. They've treated people, who are in their 70s who still had the ability to change. So now that's a general statement. So to be specific, the younger you are, the greater the amount of plasticity you have at that time in life. As you
Mhm.
get older, the amount of plasticity decreases, but that doesn't mean it's gone. So I've treated people with autism of various ages, even in their 40s, and they've made improvements. They have.
Mhm.
But I would say that a general statement is before the child reaches puberty, you probably have the greatest amount of plasticity. And then after puberty, I think those hormonal changes make changes to the brain as well, so that the amount of plasticity decreases but doesn't go away. So, what does that mean? That just means the older you are, the longer you need treatment,
Mm.
or the more severe you are. If you're young and you're very, very severe, you're going to need longer amounts of treatment, greater amounts. That's just the bottom line of how to look at it really simplistically.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
sure.
in your protocol, what areas of the brain are you focusing on?
So we always focus on areas of cognition, the speech centers of the brain, executive functioning, which is your front of the brain is executive function. That's decision making, so that the child will be able to make better decisions. Will have understand when I say cognition, when you ask them a question, even before speech, what parents notice is the child starts taking commands, like put on your shoes, which they couldn't do before.
Yeah.
So there's five areas that we treat specifically have been found to be receptive for folks with autism, and well, the person just starts thinking better, processing better. Speech is the last thing because it's very, very, very complex. It's the last thing you'll start to see. But I've seen totally nonverbal kids become verbal. That's a definite. The one thing we can't predict is who that child will be up front. I can't tell you that. I also can't tell you exactly how long it's going to take to get there, but the children get there. They do.
How do you perform TMS? Like what does this look like to a parent and a child walking into your clinic?
So we have a machine. The machine we use is FDA approved. It's called a MagVenture is the manufacturer. They've been around for an extremely long time, and there's a magnetic coil. So TMS stands for Transcranial Magnetic Stimulation. And this magnetic coil is then placed onto the child's head.
Mhm.
I hold it typically, and it gives magnetic pulses that go through the skull and into the brain. And what that does, it changes the way the neurons of the brain are firing. And so what they found in studies is, again, the lobes of the brain in typical people normally are firing at the same speed. So the lobes communicate with each other. In autism, they're firing at different speeds. And so one of the goals we have, of course, is to get them to fire at the same speed. That way the lobes are communicating with each other. And also to activate areas such as the speech center, which might not be active. And that can show up on a brain scan, the inactivity. Whereas afterwards you'll see activity. So TMS is very safe. Um, as far as people ask sometimes for side effects, possibly, the worst case side effect is you'll have a slight headache. And that goes because of the level of the amplitude. If I'm being told that the person's having any headaches afterwards, we can turn the amplitude down slightly. But at treating, as the days and weeks go by and the brain gets used to the treatment, we can turn the amplitude back so that you're getting a more fuller effect.
Yes.
But that's the worst thing that has typically happened is some type of a headache.
Wow. If you recall this last time that he came in for TMS, I think he was having headaches and yeah, you were able to like turn that amplitude down and it definitely remedied that problem without having him like lose the benefit of the treatment.
Sure. He was a great little kid, always happy. I remember him.
He is, yeah, to this day.
Yeah.
So, in terms of a treatment protocol when someone is coming to you, what are we talking about in terms of frequency, in terms of duration?
Well, I mean, there is an autism protocol that we use for these five areas, and they each have their own frequency. The amplitude remains the same over the five areas, and that's what we've seen with autism by treating these five areas, with a given autism protocol. The person improves. The follow-up, I mean, I love having follow-up and getting feedback from parents. Many times what I hear is that even after the treatment is completed, the child continues to improve. So it's kind of like once that light switch has been turned on, it continues, the brain continues the journey of change, of plasticity. It changes more quickly as you're being treated, but it continues to change in a positive way even after treatment.
I think that's so important because, especially, I mean, let's take like supplementation, for instance. Once you stop taking the supplement or the medication, you stop getting the effects of the supplement or the medication. So that's something that I love about TMS is that there doesn't really seem to be any sort of regression that goes on. So exactly, like once you turn on the light switch, the light is on. And I think that's a really important thing to point out about TMS is that it's not something that you're going to have to go every day forever in order to glean the benefits.
Yes, I agree. And the only thing regarding regression is if you quit too soon. So I tell everybody this, the minimum treatment is 8 weeks, once a day, 5 days a week for
Hmm.
8 weeks.
Yes.
And I say that's a minimum. I've treated people for much longer than that. So the question is, well, what if I don't do that? What if I only treat my child for 4 weeks? Unfortunately, what I've seen is that you lose the benefits that you may have gained. It doesn't cement in the brain. If you go less than 8 weeks, it's not something that I recommend.
Well, that would make sense because what you're doing with the coil is gently influencing like synaptic activity. Am I correct about that?
Right,
So it's like the neural network. So it would make sense that it would take at least 8 weeks for this firing pattern to kind of like solidify, I guess.
right.
Yeah.
In a simpler way that I tell people, and it seems to make sense, is if you have an infection and you go to the doctor and he gives you a bottle of antibiotics, and the doctor says to you, absolutely make sure that you finish the entire bottle. And I've known, and you may have as well, and I've known people who have felt better once half a bottle was finished and then they stopped. And the infection came back. So that's kind of
Yes.
like depression,
Yes.
you know? You
Absolutely.
need to finish the bottle of antibiotics. You need to finish the cycle of treatment. It's the
Yes.
bottom line.
So we've talked about TMS for autism, but in your experience, are there any complementary modalities for TMS that have a positive effect on autism?
Yes, I've had a lot of my patients have told me that they've gotten stem cell therapy. Many of them have had to travel to Mexico or Panama, and I'm happy to say that we're offering that now in New Jersey. I'm working with a gentleman, Mike, and he could tell you much more about it. But the parents have all told me that every time they've gone, the child has improved. And from what I can see, when we combine, um, stem cells with the TMS autism protocol that I have, we get accelerated results.
Amazing,
Thank you, Sarah.
for sure. In terms of TMS and follow up care, is there anything that you would recommend that a parent does for their kid in order to like solidify these results?
Well, again, the body is a whole. It's not separate from the mind. So when folks come in and they start telling me, my child only eats certain foods, as an example. And typically, what I'm going to hear is those are carbohydrates. My child eats pasta or rice or bread, and this crave this. They absolutely crave it. And what's been found in studies for autism, the healthiest diet is a ketogenic diet. So proteins and healthy fats. So you need to, the follow up is, to continue good progress, get the body healthier. You need to start getting your child onto more of a ketogenic diet. Definitely cut out all simple sugars, candy and whatnot. There's supplements that you can actually give your child that makes them reduce the cravings for carbohydrates.
Yes.
They do exist. And so if you introduce that, those supplements, start changing the diet. Yes, it's not easy. The child is going to resist, but they will eventually change. So a big part of it is that um, getting onto a healthier diet. And again, as for my son, what I did as an example, he got him on a very healthy diet, but he needed to detox. His glutathione levels were at zero, and everything that we tested him for heavy metals and whatnot, he had. So instead of doing chelation, I decided I was going to raise his glutathione levels in a healthy way. And there are precursors that the body uses to create its own glutathione. And he was not going to consume those precursors. He was little, he was very picky. There was no way I was going to get him to swallow any of this. So did is I said, all right, let me figure out what the precursors are. And then I went to a good compounding pharmacy and I said, I'd like you to compound these precursors, right, into a cream.
Wow.
And they did that for me. And then what I did is I applied that cream to his back every single day. And what we noticed was in school, he started sweating profusely, which meant to me he was detoxing. And we would send in extra undershirts. And his aide, I mean, he had an aide, she would change his undershirt, pack the other one in a little plastic bag and send it home, and it was soaked. And uh, well, just to let people know, so that didn't go on forever. I measured his glutathione levels again, and they started rising. And when they got healthy level, he stopped sweating. So those are bodies showing us that he needed to detox. So we got his glutathione levels up to normal levels. He detoxed all of the, quote unquote bad things, the heavy metals and whatnot that were in his body, healthy diet. These were all the things that we worked on. Gut bacteria was important, and we got him taking the correct probiotics to continue that. And, he done super well. I mean, he's 16 now. He's he has his own YouTube channel. He creates videos, narrates them. He's as verbal as you and me. Uh, what I want to point to is that this is a very long journey.
Yes.
And so one of the things he's still improving is why I'm saying this. One of the things he was not able to do was he was never able to ride a bike. He could not balance, and that was a neurological issue. He couldn't balance. 16 now, and this happened only 3 weeks ago. He finally said, enough is enough. These were his words. And he pulled the bicycle out and he said, I think I'm ready to ride. I can do it now. And so what I told him was that instead of pedaling, why don't we glide? So where we slight incline, I said, go up the incline and then just push your feet out to the side and just glide. I want to see you come down the hill, just gliding. He did that about 10 times. The first time it kind of shaky. And then the 10th time he did a very smooth glide down the hill. And I said, you know what, the hill, and this time put your feet on the pedals. Let me just see what you can do. And he started pedaling. And,
My God.
yeah, so then I had to go out and buy him a bike helmet, and now we take bike rides. So I point that out because he was unable to do that. And now at 16, he is. And, and on top of that, he has a driver's permit. So we go out and he can drive the car now with us in it. And I need to say something too, which is important. Years ago, he had people coming to the house for speech, OT, and PT. And I actually had a speech therapist say to me, he's going to have autism for the rest of his life, and he will probably never speak. And this was a speech therapist, which I found odd. And me being who I am, I smiled at her. I didn't get angry at all. I just smiled. And I said, no, I don't agree with that. I said, son is delayed,
Yes.
will speak, and he will do anything that every other kid does. And I will make sure of that. That's my job as his dad, that I'm going to help him become the best he can be. I never wanted to change my son. I loved him when he couldn't speak, and I love him now that he does speak. And my job has always been and always will be to help him be the best he can. He's chosen his career path now. He wants to become a video production person. So video production school, and I got to tell you, I mean, he's very good, and and he's very focused. Now, he's going to be going to college. That's another thing a lot of people said he would never do. He no longer has an aide. He did. He had a full-time one-on-one aide for years. He doesn't have that anymore. Doesn't need them. So, as parents, yes, we need to pursue all the things that have shown promise and are safe, right? And there are other treatments out there that can at times be unsafe, such as some forms of chelation. Be careful with that.
Yes.
But
Yes.
we always have to believe, all right, always that our children can get better, will get better, because if you as a parent don't believe that, I believe that's going to influence your child's progress. They have to know that you believe that. They look to you for that. And my son always looked to me for that. I got to tell you, before he could speak, I would look him in the eye and I would say to him, I'd say, "Hey, you and I are going to sit on this couch right here and we're going to talk to each other." And he just stared at me. He didn't, there was no sign that he understood that. But I believe I put that thought into his head and he believed that he could change. That was extremely important. I want to make that clear to people. You believe it and say to your children that you believe it. It's important. Otherwise, we put limits on ourselves, you know? And, that's what I share about that.
I know we have had several guests on the show who say the same thing. Your kid isn't going to get better than you believe that they will. Like you as the parent kind of dictate how far this is going to go, how far this journey for them is going to go. I wholeheartedly believe that as well. And your son, does he remember before? Because if he started speaking at age 6, like, can he remember before he was verbal?
Oh, yeah. He's talked
Yeah.
about it. Literally has he remembers incidents. And he said, "Do you remember when we were at this in the park and I was on the swing and I couldn't talk, but I really wanted to tell you, what I was thinking and feeling, and I was having a lot of fun and I didn't want to leave, but I wasn't able to say it." And he remembers it clearly. And so now he can tell me, you know. He remembers it very clearly. He wanted to speak, he tried to speak, he couldn't speak, and now he does. And a thing that means a lot to me too is we had an IEP meeting not long ago. And for all you parents who have kids with autism, you know what an IEP meeting is. And so we're sitting there with all the members of the team, and this
Hmm.
was the first time they invited Frankie to join the IEP meeting. He's never been he's never been part of it. And at the end of the meeting, he said, "I really want to say something to all of you at the table." And he said, "I just want you all to know that when I was unable to speak, my dad is the one who took me and helped me. And that's why I'm here right now speaking to you."
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of us who have children on the spectrum have experienced what you said from a professional or somebody, a therapist, like, well, this is the way it is. There's nothing that you could do about it. And you kind of place that limitation on the child. That is so beautiful that your son was able to witness you like advocating for him. And then, years later to be able to come back around and be like, just so you know, I know my dad has always been rooting for me. Like, that is so beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'll never forget it.
If there was like one thing that you would like other parents to know about this journey and healing autism, what would it be?
I don't know if I have one statement, but I'll try to sum everything up is that, never give up, and realize that the body is a whole. It's not individual parts. The brain is not separated from the body. So we got to make the body healthy to make the brain healthy.
Yes.
So I have had parents that have not worked on the child's diet, as an example, and they had a high sugar diet, and that's not healthy for the brain. And there wasn't as much improvement as I believe there could have been. So look at the body as a whole. Never give up. It's a long journey, and you will get there. Don't give up.
Wow. Thank you. And for our listeners out there who might be interested in learning more about TMS and your practice, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, I can give you I'll say this, every single patient gets my cell phone number. They can call me and text me. Sarah, as you know, you have my number. So I'll give it right now, and people can reach out with any questions that they have.
Cool.
And you can reach me by text or phone call at any time.
Awesome. Thank you. And for our listeners out there, where are you located currently in New Jersey?
Sure. So we are located right now in Basking Ridge, New Jersey.
Awesome. Thank you. And I have to say, very convenient location, literally like a stone's throw right off of the interstate. So it's really easy to get to. Frank, I thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with us. And I wanted to say thank you to all of our listeners. We will catch you in the next episode.
Thank you so much.